Hey everybody, welcome to Listen Money Matters. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. My name is Matt and I'm here as always with Andrew. Andrew, how are you and what are you drinking today?
Good. Tired. Very
yes.
tired.
Same here.
Survived podcast movement.
Yes, we did. Barely.
I'm good. And just water. Need to recover.
Same here. My lips have been dry the entire weekend, drinking a lot of alcohol, trying to stay focused. And yeah, it's tough. It's just water. It might be water all day. I don't think I'm going to be drinking beer today.
I think all networking happened over whiskey or bourbon.
Oh my God.
Like straight.
Ugh. Just one man should not be able to drink that much alcohol on a weekend. I'm surprised I'm still alive. Not going to lie.
Surprised my wallet's still alive.
Yeah, that too. Listen, guys, if you have any questions, you want to email the show, it's listenmoneymatters@gmail.com. Let's get that out of the way, right? And, of course, submit your catchphrases that we say at the beginning of the show. Today's catchphrase is an investment in knowledge pays the best interest, and that was sent in to us by @BrendanStory93. So thank you, Brendan, for that. Really appreciate it, and you can send those into our Twitter account. It's @MoneyMattersMan. It's our Twitter handle. I'm very excited about today's interview. Like, my head, that's me. That's my head exploding. That's my best sound effect with my dry lips. We have a best-selling author, a guy who has traveled the world. In fact, every single country. He's been to every country, which is a feat that I can't even imagine. We're going to talk to him about it. And I've read both of his books. He's got a new book coming out called, what's it called? The Pursuit of Happiness, except it's reversed. The Happiness of Pursuit. And today we have Chris Guillebeau. Chris, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dude, first of all, read both your books. Totally, just both of them blew my mind. I read them in reverse. I read $100 Startup first, and then I read The Art of Non-Conformity. And both of them are amazing. I want to just get that out of the way.
Cool. Thanks for the testimonial.
Sure. And you have a new book coming out. I want you to tell us a little bit about this new book.
Sure. So the new book, as you kindly mentioned, is called The Happiness of Pursuit. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, it's the story of my visiting every country in the world, which was about a 10-year quest. It was something that I initially just loved travel. I loved exploration. I lived overseas in West Africa for a few years. And then after I'd been to about 50 countries, I thought, like, well, what about, going to 100? Like, I'll set that as a personal goal. And then eventually I decided that that was okay, but like, wouldn't it be better to go to every country in the world? So that's kind of how that came to be. But fortunately, the book is not just about my own story, because that'd be kind of boring. So I decided to write a book about quests in general. So it uses a similar case study method as the $100 Startup, if some of the listeners are familiar with $100 Startup. I wanted to tell the stories of all kinds of people who started businesses without spending a lot of money, and talk about how they did that, what mistakes they made along the way, and what we could learn from them. So Happiness of Pursuit is kind of like that, but about quests. It's the story of all these different people who've undertaken a quest or a big adventure, a big pursuit, something that they invest a lot of time in, and just trying to understand why they do that, what they learned along the way, how they were changed, and then what we can learn about it from them as well.
And was this something that you planned on doing when you first started 10 years ago? Were you planning on writing a book about traveling to 193 countries?
Oh, no, definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, in the beginning, it was not a strategic thing at all. It was just a personal quest, and I didn't have a blog. I didn't write books. I mean, that all just kind of came about along the way. So probably just in the past 3 years, as the quest has been like reaching its end, I've been thinking about, okay, what is the story that I want to tell about this, and what do I want to communicate?
That's amazing. That's insane. Like, I don't even know if I could travel to one country. I'd be exhausted.
They have beer in almost pretty much every country in the world. They don't have bourbon in every country, but
right.
just about every country has some alcohol, even places where, it's kind of on the down low. There's pretty much, everywhere you go, you can pretty much get a drink. So I think you guys would be safe.
Oh, I need to get on a plane. I need to be comatose. What was the first country you ever traveled to?
The first country I ever traveled to, when I was a little kid, my mom married this guy who was in the Air Force, and he ended up getting deployed to the Philippines. So I ended up living there for about 2 years, from age 6 to age 8.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you like it there?
Yeah, it was all right. It's great to go back. I've been back a few times as an adult. I think I appreciated it more, when you're like a 6-year-old American kid and you just get taken to this new place. Like, there's some things you like about it, but then there's some things you don't like. Mm-hmm. So it was actually really good to go back as an adult.
I want to talk about The Art of Nonconformity. This whole idea that you wanted, I guess you didn't want to conform to what everyone else thought as far as how to live your life, right? I mean, that's a general idea.
Well, I wasn't really good at conforming to what other people thought or expected.
Oh, that's just your nature.
Yeah, it wasn't so much, again, it wasn't super strategic. Same with my employment history. People always say, like, how did you get started as an entrepreneur? I said, well, I was a terrible employee. Like, I didn't want to work for somebody else. And for me, the initial motivation was kind of like, how can I do anything else, at all possible, legally, ethically, to kind of make a living for myself. So Art of Nonconformity initially, kind of same kind of thing, is, the central message is you don't have to live your life the way other people expect. You can do good things for yourself and for others at the same time, and hear the stories of people all over the world who are doing that in different ways.
And what were the jobs that you were terrible at?
The jobs I was terrible at. I had a 1-week job as a telemarketer, which was just awful.
I did the same exact thing. 1 week.
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody actually lasted about 1 week. Like nobody actually gives their notice. They just don't show up. It was like, I knew it was a bad sign when, like, the 4 or 5 days that I was there, like every single day, there would be different people working, right? Because somebody had left the previous day. And then on the 6th day, it was my turn, I guess.
An extremely high turnover rate.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you kind of know, like, right in that this is a terrible thing. And like from the first afternoon or the first phone call, the first time someone hangs up on you, as they probably should.
Right.
When you so that wasn't good. I delivered pizza for a while. That was actually a decent job, but you don't want to do that for your whole life.
Right. And then, but what got you into quitting it all and doing just what you wanted to do?
Well, the last bad job that I had, that was age 19 or 20. I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was working for FedEx. And I was working the midnight shift. It was like a 4-hour shift from like 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. It paid like $8 an hour, and it was really hard work, just kind of lugging boxes around, and people would yell at you. And I learned how to sell things on eBay back when eBay was very new. And without really knowing much about how it works, without knowing how to write HTML, like I took terrible photos. It was just, a bad process, but I made like $19 or $20 an hour. And I was like, this is great. And I could do it whenever I wanted. I didn't have to do it from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. unless that's what I wanted to do. And so I thought that was just great. I was like, this is freedom. This represents freedom and independence for me. Maybe I can't do this my whole life, but who cares? Like, I'm 19 and, I just made $20 an hour, like selling random stuff around my apartment. So this is, that was just, it was like a good motivation. It was like a sign of something that's possible on the other side. There's another way to do things that nobody told me about. Like, I didn't learn about this in school. I always thought, my next step up the ladder was going to be, I'll be a supervisor at FedEx, then I'll make $12 an hour or something, So it was just like a whole, paradigm shift is like a terrible phrase, but it was just like a transformation for me.
Did you go to college?
I did.
You did good. Did you pay for college with eBay?
Yeah, pretty much. I went to community college first, and then I transferred to a 4-year institution. So it wasn't super expensive. And I did have some grants, and I did have some help from my dad as well.
When you got out of college, were you in debt?
I was not.
Okay. So did you pay your way while you were in college, or?
And I worked, I did work the whole time, whether it was the random jobs or then my own business. I tried to avoid debt as much as possible. I didn't take out any loans to buy a car. I didn't purchase anything I couldn't afford. I had a credit card, but I was pretty religious about paying it off every month, or I might have slipped once or twice or something. But I guess I was kind of anti-debt from the beginning. So
you were good with money. Did that come from your parents, or where did you learn that?
Yeah, I don't know if I was good with money. I guess I was just afraid of debt, and I was kind of realized that if I had debt, then my choices would be restricted. I think maybe some people think if you have a credit card, you can buy more than you can afford, so therefore you have more choices. But I made a lot of bad choices in my life. But I guess one good thing is that I did realize that if I do that, if I purchase things I can't afford, it's actually going to restrict my choices, in the future. So I'm not entirely sure where that came from, but maybe that's one good habit to counter all the bad ones.
So if you didn't have a job and you're starting your own thing, how did you pull it off with no income and not accumulating debt? That sounds like pretty tough to eat and.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had income. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, once I was doing the eBay thing, then I started doing some consulting. Then I learned a little bit more about the eBay stuff. Like, eventually, the thing with selling random stuff around your apartment is eventually you run out of stuff to sell.
Yeah.
Right? It's a great business model for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, I've done it too.
No, but that's the thing. I kind of studied. So I was studying entrepreneurship just by doing it. So I looked to see, okay, what else is selling? And I saw, for example, that coffee was selling. People were really buying this gourmet coffee for like $26 a pound, and I was curious. I was like, where do they get that from? And so I just started Googling, or actually, like, it's early search engines, Alta Vista, Excite. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that or remember that.
Yes.
Right? It's like in some museum somewhere,
Right.
I'm like trying to track down the supplier, and I realized I can buy this for like $13 a pound. I can buy it for 13. I can sell it for 26. So I started doing that, and I was working like 30 to 40 hours a week. I got a little bit better at what I was doing. So I think before too long, I was making, I guess, between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. Which is not a huge number, of course, but again, I was 19, I was 20, I was in college, and like that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
That was huge for me.
Yeah.
Like it was enormous, and so I guess I became kind of addicted to this idea of like, how can I build these small little businesses and pay for what I want, and maybe I'm not getting rich doing it, but again, I don't have debt.
Right, and so the eBay thing eventually ran out, right?
Yeah, it eventually transitioned. I spent probably 8 years or so doing random little businesses like the eBay thing. When the eBay thing ran out, then I learned about Google AdWords and AdSense, and that was like that had a whole run of its own. And I learned about affiliate marketing. I learned how to build websites. I did business consulting. I did lots of little stuff. And if it sounds impressive, it really shouldn't, because I was doing okay. I was just paying the bills. I wasn't really building a strategic business. For me, again, it was motivated by freedom and independence.
So why did you create many small things and not, one big thing?
I don't know if I knew how to create one big thing. I don't know that I would have been good at that. I also am much better at just starting a lot of different projects, for better or worse. And again, like it could be for worse, because you could say like, why didn't you like build a real startup, and sell that for a lot of money or something? But I guess for me, the motivation was, for a number of years, how can I make enough money to do what I want to do, And if I have enough money to do what I want to do, then I'm not super concerned with trying to increase that or trying to really create equity or anything like that. I think those are good goals. It just wasn't what I was focused on for a while.
That's interesting. I feel like I'm the same way. I don't want to do that one thing. I want to do a bunch of multiple things that maybe I'm good at, because I'm sort of a jack of all trade. I imagine that you are a jack of all trade as well.
Yeah, and I think over time maybe you do specialize a little bit more, but even these days, I still do a lot of different stuff, and it's just kind of how I'm oriented, and I'm kind of opposed to the idea of telling people like you have to find this one thing, especially when you're a young person. How do you know what that one thing is going to be? You don't. You experiment. If I had really focused on whatever that one thing is, I probably never would have started selling random stuff around my apartment on eBay, because I could have said to myself, well, that's not going to be, the best long-term decision. And like, what are you going to do in 3 weeks when you run out of stuff to sell? But for me, that was a great thing to do, because for the very first time, I'm making money on my own. I have money that's coming not from an employer, but from something that I've made happen myself. And that was very freeing. It felt very empowering, and it kind of led to a lot of stuff that came later. So you don't know in the beginning what that big thing is going to be.
So you recommend people just try things out, right?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
you never know.
Especially if the risk is low. I mean, I think that's the beauty of starting without a lot of money, without putting a lot of funds or capital, or without a long timeline either. If you spend 6 months, working full time on something, then you have a lot of investment there as well. But, why not just start something that you could do within a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
See what happens.
And you were living, I would imagine, pretty frugally.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Super. Probably too frugally.
I mean, you're selling all the shit in your apartment, so I imagine that had, what were you living with? Were you living like Steve Jobs, where you had a couch on the floor, or maybe a bed without a frame?
Yeah. No. I mean, I think I had a bed, but
Okay.
I had a lot of random shit. I mean, I had like video games and CDs back when people had those things.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Clothes, posters, Legos. I mean, just whatever.
When did you start the blog?
I started the blog much later than all this. Actually, the blog comes much later. I started it in 2008, and that's actually after I moved back from West Africa, moved to Seattle. And my whole goal was like, okay, I've done all this random stuff. I've traveled a lot, had these small little businesses, which, as we've talked about, were not super impressive, although they did allow me to pay the bills, so that was great. But then the next thing was like, okay, what do I hope to really do with this? Like, I have all this freedom. What's the next step? So part of answering that was starting the blog.
On the whole travel thing, you had mentioned before that you traveled with your parents. Is that really what inspired you to travel when you're older? And how much of your hitting every country in the world happened while you're with your parents?
Yeah, great question. I think it was just a few countries with my mom and stepdad. When I was a little kid, it was just Korea and the Philippines, maybe Japan or something. And I traveled a little bit as a teenager. I think I did a South America trip. I might have done a Europe trip, but it wasn't a lot. I would say what really inspired the travel was after 9/11. I was kind of depressed, like lots of folks were, and just trying to figure out, okay, where's my place in the world, and how can I help with something? Like, I want to be a part of doing something positive. And so that led to me moving to Sierra Leone and Liberia. I was there from 2002 to 2006. I was working with a medical charity, just volunteering, just doing whatever I could to help out with logistics or whatever else. And as a result of that process, I probably went to maybe 10 or 15 countries in West and Southern Africa, and then another 10 or so countries in Europe. So that's kind of where it really kicked in. It was maybe age 20, age 22, 24, around then. And then the more I did it, it was kind of like starting the small business. Like, the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. The more empowered I felt, the more excited I was, about seeing more of the world. And then I've always been really attached to goal setting. I like making lists. I like having projects. And so once I thought about making it a project of visiting every country in the world, that kind of tied a lot of things together for me.
So obviously at this point, when you're traveling around the world, you had like what, $2 million, $10 million?
No, I had $0 million. I continued to hustle and do my business consulting. I was creating some information products. I had started doing that, so I did have a little bit of passive income coming. And so I don't mean to say it's not substantial, but we're talking an income of less than $100,000 a year throughout all this time, basically. I mean, and that's changed a little bit recently. Like, some of my projects have been more successful, so that's great. But I would say throughout all that travel experience, the income is around $50,000, sometimes more. But it's definitely not millions of dollars in the bank.
So towards the end, it was mostly from chrisguillebeau.com. Like that funded your world travel?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has since 2009, since basically the first year of the blog. Again, I started the blog as a non-commercial, project. There's no advertising on it. There's no sponsorship. But I did begin to create some information products based on the things that people were asking me about after about 6 months of the blog. So yeah, within the first year of the blog, it became kind of a self-sustaining endeavor.
When you say informational products, what does that mean exactly?
I mean, the first one I created was a discount airfare guide, because people were asking me, how do you purchase your plane tickets? How do you do this travel hacking thing? How do you earn all these frequent flyer miles? So I decided to create a small little ebook, basically answering those questions. It was a super, super simple, product that took me maybe a week or so to create. I sold it for something like $24. And the first day I put it up for sale, I also didn't have a huge audience or anything. I mean, it sold something like $1,000 in revenue. And I was really excited about it, because I was like, okay, I can do something with this.
Yeah, you made something and it sold.
Yeah,
instead of just grabbing shit from your apartment or consulting. Yeah,
made something and it sold. It's an asset, even if it's a small little asset. It's going to continue to sell. Like, it's not going to do $1,000 a day every day, but if it sells one copy a day, at $24, that's $24 that I didn't have to do anything for, right?
Right.
So I really began to kind of believe in that model and get more specific about creating products. Creating evergreen products that would help people specifically with travel and self-employment.
Oh, so you were doing travel and self-employment, and this is when you had the Art of Nonconformity.com?
Yes. I mean, it's under my name, chrisguillebeau.com, but yeah, the blog is Art of Nonconformity.
And how did you transition into a full book?
Well, I did always want to write a book, and writing a book wasn't a business goal. It was just a life goal. Like, I like to write, and I like the idea of writing a book. Books had always made a big impact on me. I was a big reader. I could think of a lot of books that had changed my life as a child and teenager. So when did I transition to that? It was also that same first year. Like they started the blog, started growing the audience, created the first information product, and then I think it was in the fall of that year, so maybe like 9 months in, I started to understand the process of writing a book and what's involved with that, and how do I write a book proposal, how do I find an agent, how do we pitch the book, etc. And then so I went through all that, and we pitched the book, and I think 14 publishers turned it down, and then the 15th one said yes, and I was like, great, I'll take it, whatever it is, and that's how the journey began with that.
Was that a moneymaker, or was it were the informational products better than that? Because I've heard people like Tim Ferriss say that he really hasn't made any money off his first book.
Yeah,
Just curious.
He's actually made a lot of money off that first book. And was it a moneymaker? No, I wouldn't say it was a moneymaker for me. Definitely not the first book. Information products would definitely make more, sure. But I guess it's a complicated answer. I don't mean to give you an straight answer, because it definitely leads to a lot of other opportunities.
It's a brand builder.
Yeah, it's a brand builder, and then also like $100 Startup has done pretty well. I mean, it's sold several 100,000 copies around the world. So, even though the per copy royalty is fairly low, I mean, it is substantial, over time and over a lot of copies.
Did you study writing, like at school?
Nope.
No, so that was all just a personal. We're just interested in writing.
I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of writing at school. I did a graduate program in Seattle when I was there at the University of Washington. And so I wasn't studying writing, but I was studying international studies. But I had to write a lot of term papers that no one would ever read. I had to spend a lot of time in the library, like crafting these things that would get no audience. But that's another story.
Right. You said you mentioned you were a big reader, and a couple of books that changed your life. What were some of those books?
Oh, sure. I don't think I read a lot of business books. I was mostly reading fiction, and then some nonfiction. I like the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's about survival and even kind of emotionally thriving in a really difficult circumstance. I like the book Mountains Beyond Mountains. It's a story of Dr. Paul Farmer, who's made a big difference in Haiti and other places around the world in the area of healthcare. Lots of other things. My favorite novelist is Haruka Murakami. I don't know if you're familiar with Murakami's work, but probably my favorite book of his is A Wild Sheep Chase. There's a few of them for you.
That's awesome.
So a lot of people who do this make money online thing, they're writers. Matt and I have kind of discovered that we're not writers. And we haven't made any money on the podcast yet. I'm just curious, do you think that you need to be a writer to kind of give this whole thing a go?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. No, I don't think so. For me, writing is the medium that I gravitate towards. I don't have a podcast. I don't do a good job with online video. For me, writing is what I do, and then the events, so it works for me. But I think, there's a lot of people who've had some really successful podcasts as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who've been able to monetize podcasts, and not all of them. Those people are writers. Gary Vaynerchuk is an online personality who's super, super great with online video and social media. I think he'd be the first one to say he's not a writer. In fact, it's kind of funny because he wrote a book, and he even said in the book, I didn't actually write this book, which for anyone else would be totally disingenuous and awful. But for him, it kind of makes sense, and it's fine. It's cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's more than one way. I feel like one way or another, the answer is value, right? The other one way or another, you have to help people. And value is one of those words that's always overused in business, but I just think of it like that, as helping people. You have to help people. You have to make a difference in people's lives, but there's more than one way to do that.
I think a big question that's kind of out there related to that is how do you know, if you're going to help people? How do you know that people need this widget that you want to create, or that you should even create this widget because people want it?
Yeah, also a great question.
You're nailing it, Andrew, with the questions.
Woo!
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. I could only answer it from my experience. I think, and then from everybody else I talk to, for $100 Startup, I think it's really helpful to focus on what people are asking you about. I feel like everyone, no matter what their age, like they are good at something. Everyone's an expert at something, and there's probably some questions that people are asking you a lot. And if they're asking you these questions, it's because they recognize you as an authority or as an expert, and also there's this demand for whatever this knowledge or information or widget, whatever it is. So I guess in my case, everyone was asking when I first started the blog. I had no intention of turning it into a business, but everyone was asking me about the airfare thing and the frequent flyer thing. And I thought maybe there's a market for this. Maybe I'll create something, and I'll still do most of my work for free, but this is available for purchase for those who want it. And that turned out to be a successful thing. So I guess maybe just paying attention is good. Paying attention and listening, and if there's something that's not working well, there's an inefficiency or something you see that's something that would make your life better, then you're probably not the only one.
So, how do you know that this thing that people are asking about, or this, how do you know it's not stupid? And I think not only like that, maybe the idea is stupid or the thing that is stupid, but how do you understand like the value in it? Because I know a lot of people, Matt included, have a very tough time assigning value to the things that they do and are good at. Like he almost feels like he could do it, so it's like not really that valuable.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot there that we could unpack. I guess you don't know if it's stupid or not. That's why you do it, and why you put it out there, and why hopefully you do it with relatively low risk, and low investment. That first ebook that I made, like I said, it didn't take a ton of work. It was more an experiment, and I didn't really put a whole lot into the marketing of it. Some people even kind of made fun of it because they're like, "This is like a terrible title." The title is like "Discount Airfare Guide." It's the most unsexy title you could possibly come up with. It should be like, "Here's how to save $364 on your next plane ticket today."
Right.
Right. But I guess it gave me confidence to maybe go back and optimize and improve and do something a little bit smarter. The second time. So I guess that's the first thing, and the second thing is. Yeah, the part about how if something's easy for you, maybe you don't see the value. I think there's a lot there because, if it's easy for you, it's not necessarily easy for other people. Like I'm not a mechanical person. I can't fix anything. I can't put together IKEA furniture. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Right. Whereas some people just have like a super great talent for it. I can't even, like I used to say, all I could do is screw in a light bulb. That's the only thing I could do around the house. But then light bulbs started getting really complicated because now there's like other pieces to them and things. Like you have to take like part of the lamp off. So I can't even do that anymore. So that for me is very difficult. I would be very happy if Matt would come over to my house and fix my light bulbs.
Oh, I can't help you with that either.
Right, but so there's somebody who could. Probably.
How many online entrepreneurs does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Right, exactly. In weeks.
So I'm curious because. And I don't know, I may be completely off base here, but I imagine when you launched your first book, I was launched to mostly crickets. It's not like not everyone's a Tim Ferriss, so they launch it and then they're like, off to the races. So how do you like digest? Like you spend weeks on this book, you think it's going to be huge, you launch it, you make $30, and then you're like, well, that sucked.
Well, I did everything I possibly could to make it successful, and I wasn't launching to a huge audience, but it wasn't crickets either. I knew people, and I really believe that everyone knows people. Like even if you think, I don't know like this blogging personality, or I don't know like this famous person online who has Twitter followers. Like who cares? Like everybody knows someone. And when I launched the first book, the blog had been out for a year and a half or so, and first of all, I went to all my readers. And the most loyal and amazing people of all. And I asked them to help out. I did write to other bloggers, other authors, other personalities, people that I had either had relationship with or didn't even know at that point. If I have a book out that I believe in, if I've worked on it for years, I don't have any shame in going to people and asking them to help. And of course they can say no, and that's fine too. I did everything I could. I did my own book tour also because I talked to the publisher and I was like, "Hey, like I'm excited. My first book's coming out. Like, where's the tour?" They're like, "Oh, we don't do that.
It's up to you, yeah."
Yeah, we don't actually have money for that, and most authors don't want to do it anymore and stuff. And I thought, well, it would be fun to do it. I had done a couple of meetups, and it really enjoyed like talking to those people and hearing like how they connected with my world or whatever. So I said, I'll do my own book tour if that's what it takes. And I have this whole thing about going to every country in the world, so it can't be a small thing. I can't just be like, I'm going to 4 cities.
Right.
So I decided to do all 50 states. And then I decided to do every province in Canada because I didn't want to leave them out either. So it was like 63 cities. And I said, I will do this myself. I would love for people to help and be a part of it. Publisher, I would love for you to help and be a part of it, but I'm going to do it regardless, you know? So I just started doing that. I mean, I started in New York. I did New York, I did Philly, I did DC, Boston, Maine, Connecticut, all of New England. Then I did all of the Midwest, did all of the South, West Coast,
I could understand New York, but why Philly?
Oh, that's not fair.
It's a state, it represents, it's a city and a state. So had to go there. Some of the most interesting stops, like I don't mean to like sidetrack on this, but some of the most interesting stops were actually smaller places, places like in North Dakota or wherever, where there'd be like 15 people. And it was great. It actually helped kind of built the platform. It helped me establish me for the next book. And more than just the business stuff, like it gave really strong relationships that exist, to this day, 5 years later.
It's amazing. That's a lot. Well, you like traveling, so that's easy for you. There's a lot. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of authors that just despise traveling.
Yeah, I guess, but that sucks. I mean, like, once in a while I read these, like columns or something about authors complaining about book tour, and I'm like, you should just shut up because you have a great life.
Right.
Write books and people care about them, and you go to bookstores and there are people sitting there like waiting to hear from you. Like this is a great life.
You mentioned earlier events, and you have an event called World Domination Summit. How did that begin? What gave you the idea to do something that, and it's huge. I mean, it's huge, especially in our world. How did you come up with that? How did you get it together? What was the whole thing behind that?
And also describe it for our listeners, because I think most won't know what it is.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a good segue, because we were just talking about these meetups and the book tour thing that I did, and all along the way there were these great people that were coming out to these events, and a lot of them were creative, unconventional types. Lots of personal finance kind of people, lots of entrepreneurs, travelers, artists, students, people interested in nonprofit, just all kinds of different stuff. And they were all ages too. Like there were a lot of young people, but there were also older people who were, hoping to do something different for a second career, or maybe they'd always had an unconventional career and they didn't actually have a lot of peers who understood, what they were doing. So I thought like the greatest asset, to use that word again, the greatest asset is this community, and the greatest asset are all these amazing people. So wouldn't it be great if we could bring people together, not just, for one night in New York or one night in North Dakota or wherever, but like from all over the place. And so I am from Portland, Oregon. That's my hometown. I'm here at least half the time, even though I'm traveling a lot as well. And so World Domination Summit, first iteration was just a gathering of creative people. And I invited everyone that I knew to come. We did about 400 people the first year. That was 4 years ago. And we had some main stage talks. There's some programming. There's lots of workshops. There's also just lots of meetups and activities. So it's just a celebration of independence and freedom. And so that was 4 years ago. And then we decided to do it every year. And it's grown a bit every year to now there's maybe 4,000 to 5,000 people that are participating. And
it's been huge. Is it a moneymaker or no?
It is not a moneymaker. No, we did it as a not-for-profit right from the beginning. For the first year, I said it was an accidental not-for-profit because I lost money on it. I lost like $30,000 in putting it together because I didn't know how events worked.
Right.
But then, second year we got a little bit smarter, and the audience size is bigger. We charged a little bit more for tickets. So the event makes a profit, but I don't keep the profit. We kind of funnel it all back into the scholarship fund that we have.
That's amazing. It's huge.
It's fun. Great.
What's the next thing for Chris Guillebeau?
I got this new tour that I'm doing. I have the new book that you mentioned earlier, Happiness of Pursuit. So I'm doing 40 cities at least.
Are you coming to Philadelphia?
I am indeed.
When are you coming to Philly?
September 11th, I believe.
Really?
Yep.
I will be there.
Really soon. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, start in New York and go all across the country, doing some stuff in Canada, eventually to India and Australia. But that's kind of the focus for now.
Focuses on the book.
Focus on the book. Yeah, the book, the whole community. It's all intertwined. Like we talked about earlier, I don't want to just do one thing.
Right.
So it's all intertwined. But I do also believe in seasons. So this is kind of like a season for the book.
Mm-hmm. And the book comes out September 9th?
That's right.
I can't wait for it. honestly, because and your other books, The Art of Nonconformity, which was amazing, and The $100 Startup, which I read first, also amazing. And
Thank
so
you.
I'm very much looking forward to the new one.
Cool. Appreciate that.
And we definitely get early copies, right?
Of course. Yeah. I'll send you like 100.
Yes.
Let's just send us 100 copies. We'll get it out to our listeners. It'd be perfect.
That's great.
Yeah, we only emailed you because we figured like, hey, like maybe we'll save like $30 or something.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, 35 minutes together.
Right. So, Chris, I just want to thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you.
All right. Guys, listen, if you have any more questions for Chris or just questions about what we talked about on today's episode, that's a thing, right? Shoot us an email, listenmoneymatters@gmail.com. And you can, of course, go to our website, which is listenmoneymatters@gmail.com. I don't think I'm not gonna read a review because I don't want to. Is that okay, Andrew?
Yeah. But I just want to say that our website's listenmoneymatters.com and not at gmail.com.
Right, Listen Money Matters. Did I say at Gmail?
I think you did. But anyways.
Well, listenmoneymatters.com, you know where it is. And Chris, what's your website that people can find the book when it comes out and all your other books?
Yeah, so they can go to artofnonconformity.com, as you mentioned, but they can also go to chrisguillebeau.com, which no one can spell. But if you type in something close to that on Google, you'll probably find it.
Yeah, I totally butchered it when I was trying to find your site first.
It's all good. You type in Happiness of Pursuit or Art of Nonconformity or anything like that, you'll find me.
Yeah, and I have a long last name of 10 letters, so I understand the...
Awesome, man.
So are you a drinker?
I am a drinker. It's 9:30 in the morning,
Of
so
course.
I'm drinking coffee at the moment.
I need some alcohol recommendations and some coffee recommendations from you.
Oh, okay. So just a general alcohol recommendation, like a specific bourbon or something? What are you looking for?
What is your favorite type of liquor?
Yeah, well, so usually in the evenings, I will have a bourbon-based beverage, most often. Sometimes gin, but usually bourbon. So there's a lot of great distilleries here on the West Coast that I like. I'm probably going to do like an old fashioned or a Manhattan or maybe a Sazerac. Actually, would be like my go-to if you can find a bar that knows how to make it.
What's your favorite bourbon?
Favorite bourbon?
Your go-to?
Go-to here in Portland is called Sweet Temperance, which is really nice. In terms of a national brand, I'd probably do like a Knob Creek or something.
Knob Creek. Are you a Woodford fan?
Yeah, Woodford's great also, definitely.
I just had Whistling Pig over the weekend at Podcast Move, and I thought that was amazing.
Okay. Cool.
And what about gin?
Gin, so Aviation is also based here in Portland. It's getting more national presence, and that's good. Otherwise, I don't know that I'm really a connoisseur. You know, like I can probably tell a difference between like Seagram's and Hendrix, but I don't know that I could really like give you a lot of commentary on all the nuances.
I'm obsessed right now with Blue Coat Gin. Have you had Blue Coat?
No, I have not.
It's a small distillery here in Philadelphia.
Okay, great.
It's amazing. You want a bottle?
Yeah, bring some out to the tour.
Yeah, I'll give you a bottle.
Okay, cool, man. That's fine.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And coffee. I just want one good coffee recommendation. Since you're from Portland, I think their coffee over there is probably way better than it is in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I actually love the East Coast, but we do coffee a little bit better over here.
A little better, yeah.
I mean, it's so the most obvious recommendation would be Stumptown, which actually is infiltrating at least New York. I don't know if it's made it down or made it over to you guys yet.
It's made it to San Francisco because I talked to the people at Ready for Zero, and they mentioned that. Yeah,
I mean, well, they're great. They're wonderful. Happy Cup is another one here. It's like a roaster that works with people with disabilities. So it's kind of a great coffee, and it's also kind of giving back to the community.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man.
Cool. Happy to do it.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, listen, that's it for our show. And thanks again for hanging out with us. And, of course, we look forward to the next episode. So later.
Later, man.